The Accidental Conservationist. It's not a name I really liked at first, but it's one that fits. I never had intentions of becoming a conservationist, but after the death of a close friend, Nancy Cullity, her husband Brian asked me to go on a couple trips. And so we went to Ecuador and Chiapas, and later to Brazil and Guyana. After seeing Guyana, I realized that this was a country that was overlooked by most, misunderstood by many, and largely untouched. This was a country that, with some effort now, might be saved for the future. This is a critical moment in time. Will Guyana's forests and Amerindian cultures be consumed by the modern world, or can we offer an alternative? A reason for Guyana to profit through conservation and ecotourism? Our first trip to Ecuador to visit the Guarani villages in southwestern Ecuador showed how difficult it is to actually find wildlife in the forest. But more than that, it showed me a culture that was not only rare, but because of the oil industry, was in great danger of disappearing completely from the face of the earth. Here, where people have lived much in the same fashion as they do now for thousands of years, oil has been discovered and threatens to change the world forever for these people. Still hunting with blowguns and only recently wearing clothing, it was more than apparent that these people might not be here in another 10 years. Halfway through our stay, we witnessed the turning on of the first generator and wondered how long it would be before the chants of the elders would disappear forever. Of course, the main reason most people go on an eco tour is for the wildlife. And without much trouble and a little patience, you can find the thing you've come to look for, namely the animals. We were lucky we saw the ocelot, a pretty rare sight, but they have seen jaguar on this river. And the birds were plentiful, and we even saw a clay lick where macaws by the hundreds could be found. And despite the fact that we'd seen so many animals, which was why I had gone in the first place, I was still struck and am still haunted to this day by the culture, the people, and the thought that this was something that very few people would ever get the chance to see. Our next trip to Chiapas, Mexico, actually turned out to be much more of a cultural event than anything else. After touring around Chiapas, we spent about 24 hours in the Lacandon River across from the Lacandon National Forest. Here, attempts had been made in the past to captive raise and release scarlet macaws. And these may be the last scarlet macaws in all of Mexico that are still wild. These jays seemed to be some sort of sentry, and the scarlet macaws paid a lot of attention to them, and whenever the jays gave the alarm, the scarlet macaws either went completely silent or flew away. Here is a scarlet macaw in a nest hole, and one leaving the nest hole just at sunrise. We did take a trip up the river, and of course the prerequisite caiman. Here is a howler monkey with her baby. Great shot. We were no more than 15 feet away. She was completely unafraid of us. No fear whatsoever. And here is her boyfriend. But the best shot of the day probably was of the tapir. This guy we found swimming in the river, and were able to keep up with him for 30 or 40 feet. This is the only wild tapir I've ever seen on any of the trips I've taken. And some of the nice toucans, again at dawn.
So these nuts were evolved over time to be dispersed by giant animals that are now extinct, such as giant ground sloths and a series of other animals that weighed 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 tons, the giant ground sloth.
Our next trip to Piauí, Brazil, was graced with the presence of Dr. Charles Munn. Of course, having someone as experienced and knowledgeable as Charlie with us made the trip much more enjoyable. But he has put a lot of effort into manicuring the experience to be as comfortable as possible, with nice lodges, the baiting of animals so that they would be up close and personal and available for great photography shots. Here's a potu, and we had just in the previous shot seen the maned wolf. There's one thing you can't control when you're a videographer, and that's the other people.
Look at the size of them. Oh my God.
Everyone seems to have something to say, of course, when you see the wonderful things. And here are two bat falcons during their courtship, and actually we witnessed the mating, and I was not fortunate enough to catch that on tape. As I mentioned, Charlie's gone to great lengths to make sure that there are great photo opportunities and that people get to get up close to the animals that they're viewing. Here is a tunnel that he's made that leads up to the blind that is probably over 100 yards long. And once inside the blind, you look through the peepholes at some spectacular views that lie 20 or 30 feet away. Charlie also prides himself on the guaranteed sightings. He has set these up so that he can offer several animals as a 100% chance of seeing them. And here we have some Seriema, which are generally not planned, but we got a great view of these guys. This was at Greenwing Valley, so called for the greenwing macaws. And then it was on to Hyacinth Valley, named after the hyacinth macaws as well. Here the hyacinth macaws actually nest in the cliffs. And we had a spectacular view as we took a walk up to the base of the cliffs of these birds warning us, trying to scare us away, I'm sure. One thing we did see, though, was something that had never been seen before, and that was the hovering hyacinths. Even Charlie's employees, the ex-trappers who had been here all their lives, had said they'd never seen anything like this before. What I took away from this trip with Dr. Charlie Munn is the fact that by offering these animals their favorite foods and building blinds and preparing well in advance, that one can guarantee the sightings and the excellent photography that we were able to see and experience. These monkeys, the famous nut-cracking macaques, were a big bonus for us. I had no idea we were going to see these. This big male knows how to use this rock, which weighs up to a third of his body weight, to crack that nut in only 2 goes. The small juvenile, although he's going to try for the next half hour, never managed to get into that nut. He knows what he has to do. He knows all the motions and the movements. And he knows that there's something good to eat in there. He's just not sure of the mechanics of how to open a nut and which of the nuts that are ready to be opened. And finally, on to Guyana. As we approach the airport just outside of Georgetown, we can find 2 of the main sources of income that have been in Guyana for hundreds of years: rice and sugarcane. A more recent addition to this has been the mining industry, which threatens to clear-cut quite a bit of the forest, but seems to be regionalized for right now. The other newcomer to this income source is the timber industry. And one that has been going on for many years is the export of wildlife for the pet trade. Guyana is one of the world's major exporters of animals. Many of them are endangered. Ask any American what they know about Guyana, and you're likely to get a cute response like, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." Guyana has had its fair share of political unrest, and this has not only served to keep people away, but has scared investors from coming into the country and exploiting what is there, thus protecting it. Despite the poverty that exists in Georgetown, the main part of the town, the part that the British built, is beautiful. Filled with Victorian architecture, the remnants of this British colony are all around you and are being restored in time as money is available. Here we see Queen Victoria. New buildings are going up right alongside the old, and investments are being made in the infrastructure. Guyana is made up of many different cultures, and they all seem to get along fairly well with each other. Many Guyanese are descendants of the slaves that once worked the fields. There's also a large Hindu and Muslim population in the country. The interesting thing is, Guyana's jungles aren't that far away, and it seems that the parrots are moving back in. Each time I visited, I've seen more and more parrots. With this last visit, 4 different species outside my hotel room window. These 2 Amazons seem to be perfectly at home on the roof of this house. And this Hans is perfectly adapted to eating a star fruit out of someone's garden. And actually reminds me of a lot of the birds that live in my backyard. These 2 Amazons couldn't care less whether this tree was in the middle of a jungle or just outside the window of my hotel in Georgetown. They show us what Amazon life is really like: playful, fun, enjoying your companion, and free. Leaving Georgetown, we take off in a small airplane for about 2.5 hours down to the Lethem area. Get a great vantage point from the sky. You get to see the layout of the town, the many canals that once fed the rice and sugarcane fields, and the vast expanse of forest that lies below you. A great advantage to taking one of these small aircraft is that you fly much lower and you can get a good glimpse of the forest, unbroken for almost 2 hours. One of the side trips that you can take from Georgetown is the trip to Kiter Falls. This is the world's largest single-drop waterfall at 741 feet. While in the area around the falls, there is the opportunity to see the golden frog. This little frog lives inside the water cups of the large bromeliads that grow to be over 8 feet tall. Coming into land at Lethem Airport, you start to realize that you're landing in someplace fairly remote. No buildings are in sight, only at the end of the runway. You can see the Kanuku Mountains, which lie just to the east of Lethem, and a short drive or walk of a couple of miles brings you to the village of St. Ignatius. And this brings us to the task at hand. The reason for our most recent trip was to document wildlife, organize a wildlife survey by the local guides, and to verify the existence of macaws and harpy eagles. And so with our guide Paul and our cook Teresa and 8 porters, we began our 4-day trek into the Kanuku mountain range, which would take us around Breezy Mountain. This was our first look at the mountain. If we'd known what we were in for, we might not have done it. But having done it, I'm glad I did it. It was an amazing trip. The first day's walk seemed to go on forever and ever. And at an incline of almost 45 degrees, I was out of breath and was grateful for the frequent breaks that Shirley Melville and I needed. While walking, it's very tempting to grab onto any nearby stick to help you catch your balance, but you have to look before you grab. And you would have thought it'd be easy to keep up with a barefoot guy, but what took him 2 hours with a full pack took me 6. Once at the top, we stopped at Eagle Camp. Although under construction, it served us fine for the 2 days we were there. A quick cup of tea, a short rest, and we were off to the first eagle nest. Although we didn't see any eagles near the nest or in the tree, we did see 3 or 4 of them during the next day or so. And although I didn't manage to capture any on film, Paul revisited the site 3 or 4 days after we were there and took these shots of Harpy Eagles flying around. We've been informed that the new lodge at top of Eagle Mountain has been completed, and Paul has also managed to build a 200-foot observation tower looking down into one of the Harpy Eagle nests. We're looking forward to this on our next trip. This, the end of the first day, we looked forward to the cup of tea and sitting around a candle.
Yeah.
The next day, we did manage to see one monkey. We only knew he was there because he threw a large log at us. Leaf cutters, and a little interview with LaRose, one of the guides.
Travel into each place easily.
Do you think there's a chance that
everybody in the village might agree to not catching parrots?
Yes.
If they think that there might be people to visit and pay to visit,
Yes.
that maybe that's
Yes, they will agree, because you see, it's better for us, because killing away the birds, selling away the birds, to me it don't make sense. It don't make sense. So I think that it's better for us to not catch and sell away. I sorry for them,
Yeah.
because to me that I have 4 sons. Like to me that afterward they will do something like how you saying that you will pay to see them bored and so by the time.
LaRose goes on to say he hopes that his 4 sons will have the opportunity to be guides as opposed to having to capture birds and take care of him in his old age. Day after leaving the mountain, we took a drive to Nappi village, about 24 miles north of St. Ignatius. On the way, we managed to see a giant anteater. They're very timid and tend to run away. Note the large termite mound. Nappi village is a beautiful place, very primitive and very pristine. People live here like they have for thousands of years. Here's the Nappi Primary School. We visited there after having given them a TV, DVD player, generator, and a lot of educational DVDs.
Before Mr. Brian Quality makes his remarks, we would like to have another cultural presentation. And after the cultural presentation, we will have Mr. Brian.
As a thank you, they put on a beautiful show, including this parrot dance. We will be joining the Nappi Primary School with 2 schools here in New England, one in Lexington, Massachusetts, and one in Vermont, with a cultural exchange program and a video pen pal program. One of the great aspects of the trip to Guyana and the Rupununi area is the great cultural experience that one can have in addition to the wildlife. And we think that this is just a great combination, and we hope that many people will enjoy the experience of seeing the artisans, the Amerindians, and their beautiful culture. I'd like to leave you now with some gratuitous shots of wildlife, and hope you've enjoyed your visit with me to the Rupununi. Thank you very much.